4 $500 scholarships to Southern County seniors to enroll at Shawnee State University.
Objectives for today, and that will be to solve mixture problems. Learning targets, you're going to have to know proportions and percentages. Example number 1. A 700 milliliter solution of acid and water contains 12% acid. If 120 milliliters of water is added, then what is the percent of acid? So we know that 12% of this 700 is acid. So we must find what that translates to in milliliters. So you start with 700 and divide it by, or not divide, but times by 0.12. 700 times 0.12 is 84. 84 milliliters of acid is what we have so far. But 120 milliliters is going to be added to the container. So you started with 700 milliliters of a solution of acid and water. You're adding 120 milliliters of water. That means 820 milliliters total is what is in the solution. However, we have to figure out what is the percent of acid. So here's how many milliliters of acid you have. Divide that by 820. 84 divided by 820 comes out to be 0.1024 and on out. Leave that into your calculator and multiply it by 100. When you do that, you should come back with 10% rounded to the nearest percent. Example number 2. A 600 milliliter solution of acid and water contains 15% acid. If 50 milliliters of water is added, then what is the percent of acid? First, find out how many milliliters of acid you have. So that would be 15% times 600. 600 times 0.15. 600 times 0.15 gives you 90 milliliters of acid. But remember, you're going to add 50 milliliters of water to the container. You start with 600 milliliters in your entire solution. You're now adding 50 milliliters of water. That gives you a total amount of 650 milliliters in your solution. We want to figure out what percent this 90 is of that 650. So we're going to have to divide 90 by 650. 90 divided by 650 is 0.1384 and on out, but you must multiply that by 100 in order to convert to a percent. Round it to the nearest percent. It comes out to be 13.84615. Rounded to the nearest percent makes that 14. Practice number 1. A 230 milliliter solution of acid and water contains 9% acid. If 40 milliliters of water is added, then what is the percent of acid? The solution for the practice problem. First, we have to figure out what 9% is of 230. So 230, I have to rewrite that. There we go. 230 times 0.09 is your first move. 230 times 0.09 is 20.7. And now remember, you're going to add 40 milliliters of water. So we started with 230 total in our solution. We're going to add 40 milliliters of water to get 270 milliliters in our solution. 20.7 milliliters of that is acid, so we're dividing that by 270. 20.7 divided by 270 is going to be 0.0766 and on out. Multiply that by 100 to get 7.666 and on out. That rounds to 8%. Practice number 2. A 1,000 milliliter solution of acid and water contains 24% acid. If 200 milliliters of water is added, then what is the percent of acid? The solution for the practice is to start off by finding how many milliliters of acid we have in this 1,000 milliliter solution. Multiply 1,000 by 0.24, and that should come out to 24, or actually 240. Should come out to be 240. Now, when you add 200 milliliters of water to the 1,000 milliliter solution, you're going to come up with 1,200 milliliters. So divide 240 by 1,200. And that's the same thing as saying 24 divided by 120. And if you simplify that, it will come down to 1 over 5 without even using a calculator, because 24 goes into 125 times. 1/5 as a percent is 20%. Practice number 3. A 400 milliliter solution of acid and water contains 12% acid. If 25 milliliters of water is added, then what is the percent of acid? The solution for the practice problem is to find out how many milliliters of acid we have out of 400. So you multiply 400 by 0.12. 400 times 0.12 is 48. We're adding 25 milliliters of water to the solution, so it's 400 plus 25. That's 425. Divide your 48 milliliters of acid by the 425 milliliters total contents of the solution. 48 divided by 425 is going to come out to be 0.11294 and on out. When you multiply that by 100, you're going to come back with a percent rounded to the nearest percent of 11.